Hello, I figured I'd just give a quick tour of my my brand shiny new Husky Toolbox here. So let's start with the top thing. Start at the top first. So right up here I have this cheap but little Baco light that I think I got from O'Reilly.com, and it charges via a power brick here. It's got an internal rechargeable battery. You know, it's not powered by button cells or AA's or AAA's or anything like that. It does have a hook as well that came off, but the hook point also doubles as another magnet on top here, so you can hang it in the vertical position as well. The forward position here turns on the main light bar. That is off, and then the far position turns on the flashlight portion back here. But for right now, I'm just leaving it plugged in on the toolbox here and in the overhead configuration, so I can see what's on top here. Then we'll go to the top deck, I guess. This is my laptop that I've used for school. It's just a little Acer Chromebook, and you know, it was used for school, but I was out of school and I was like, I need a little computer out here just so when I'm in the middle of a repair job I can type something in. I'm fortunate enough to be able to have more than one computer, so this computer stays out here on the toolbox here. Next, we got some Mean Green Auto and Garage Cleaner and Degreaser. This stuff is really good. I've been wiping down all my tools at the end of the night, the tools that I've used for the day, to get the smudge and all that stuff off of them. And it works really, really well. So I take a shop towel here. Those are all shop towels. One sheet, fold it into quarters, give it 2 to 3 spritz of this, and wipe down tools, and the grease comes off like nothing. For the stuff that's caked on a little more, you just want to let it sit on there for, 10, 20, 30 seconds maybe. Let that stuff soak in, and then you can pull it right off with a shop towel. Like, no aggressive scrubbing required at all. Alright, so now we're moving on to the actual drawers, and this is a really nice toolbox. It was a lovely Christmas present. It's the top and the bottom. So first we'll be focusing on the top set of drawers here, which is sockets, as you can see, mostly, and doodads. And you'll see why it's like that. It's mostly sockets. As you can see, we look left to right here. This is the Stanley Toolkit. This is the first ever, mechanics tools that I bought. I got this on Amazon because it was a basic set when I started working on the Honda Odyssey. I bought it because it was both metric and standard. It's got, the really common sizes in both, and across the 3 different ratchet sizes as well. It's a very convenient toolkit, and I'd highly recommend it if you're starting out, like me. I mean, I'm still pretty much starting out. I haven't done anything too crazy yet, but my needs have evolved past this standard toolkit. But as you can see, it's got some whatever these little things are up here. You've got a set of wrenches, the 3 different ratchet sizes, quarter, 3/8, half-inch, and then this is a screwdriver bit. This is also a 1/4-inch drive, so if you have a small socket, you can put it on that and use it to lever that out, or unscrew it that way. 3/8 extension, 1/4-inch extension. This is a 5/8 socket. I'm gonna say its intended uses for spark plugs, the only reason I say that is because it's off away from the other sockets, and it is 5/8, which is a relatively common spark plug size, and it's like the only real true deep socket that comes in the kit. Like, there are some longer sockets here, but they're not necessarily like deep sockets. This is the only deep socket that comes with the kit, so that's why I think it's a spark plug socket. Underneath here we have 2 sets of Allen wrenches. We got the standard sizes and the metric sizes, which I finally used the other day when I was working on the Volkswagen. Tape measure, for good measure, but then I have a couple of my standalone socket kits over here. So first we have, this is what I called on the box. I wrote the Honda Crankbolt Killer. I was changing the serpentine belt on the Honda, and I had to pull the crank bolt off and the crank pulley in turn, because I had lost one of my sockets. It had gotten wedged in between the block and the crank pulley, so I had to remove the crank pulley to get that socket out, and this is what I had to use. I tried a regular 19 mil impact socket, and that totally didn't work. And then I was reading the reviews on the Honda website and checking out Honda forums, and they all said that this, I don't know if it's Liesel or Lyle, But they're a pretty famous tool company. They make lots of great tools, and this is specifically for taking off Honda crank bolts. It's 19 mil, and it's like 3 times as thick as a normal 19 mil impact socket was. And because the Milwaukee gun, which is a really great half-inch gun with the regular 19 mil socket, just wasn't cutting it. And as soon as it had, you know, the weight behind this, it took that crank bolt off like it was nothing. It ate that crank bolt for breakfast. Here's a set of deep sockets that I got. These are half-inch drive. I think it's like 15 up to 24. There are a couple missing in between, but you know, it's the more common ones. I got a 3/8 U-joint. I know I have a 1/4 inch U-joint somewhere too. I just don't know where it is, or universal bit, whatever, you know, whatever you call it. This is a 19 mil half-inch socket, and the reason I got this is because I wanted to use the breaker bar to take off the wheels on the Honda without using an adapter, because I do right here have a set of the, you know, the AutoZone brand, the Duralast adapters here. You know, 3/8 to half-inch, half-inch to 3/8, 1/4 inch to 3/8, and 3/8 to 1/4 inch. You know, all the basic conversions that you need. This is the special 24 mil socket that I used to change the alternator pulleys for the Volkswagen the other day. I did use this on the impact gun, and amazingly it didn't split, crack, or anything. It can still actually be used for other things, which is great. This is a set of Allen things, Allen bits here, or hex head bits, whatever you want to call them. Or I think the correct terminology is just hex bits, because hex head would mean it's, you know, a normal bolt. But I got these because the bottom bolt on the bottom alternator mounting bolt on the Volkswagen was an Allen bolt, but the other bolts were regular 13 mil bolts. I don't know, I'm confused. I'm just as confused as you are. Next drawer, we got wrenches here, and that's pretty just straightforward. I got this set of these wrenches here. This is a Craftsman set up until the 18 mil wrench here. And I got this because it was metric. I was working on the Honda, so I needed metric sizes. And that was also due to the crank bolt job. I had to pull the crank pulley off, because the main job was to change the cert belt, and I thought it would be in and out, but you know, if you know anything about Hondas and Odysseys, it's actually quite a bit of a PT or PITA to change the cert belt on those. So I was just out grabbing tools that I needed, and I just decided to pick up a set of metric wrenches. These Craftsman wrenches have worked great. I mean, I know a lot of people like look down on Craftsman, but they, for me so far, they've held up pretty well. Then over here I've got some Duralast wrenches, which I had to get to do the fuel filter on the Volkswagen. They were just a couple metric sizes up that I didn't have. I just got, you know, I've got a 19, a 22, and then they didn't have a 27 mil wrench, so I got the standard equivalent, which is 1 1/16, which is why I put the tape on it here and wrote 27 mil across it, so I have it for future reference. I've got 2 Pennzoil oil filter wrenches, which we just found in the work truck that nobody was using, so I just use those. Next drawer, we have hand tools. Just, you know, I guess a lot of tools you actually operate by hand, so it's not super descriptive. But these are like all the odds and ends that don't necessarily fit. And the 1/4 inch sockets, as you'll see on the front maybe, and 1/4 inch sockets. Once again, these are the other 2 halves of the folding Stanley toolkit. And luckily they fit actually very nicely in the drawer, almost like they were meant to be. But yeah, those fit nicely. This is just a random Stanley Phillips that I have. This is a Yankee screwdriver that I bought from the guy at the Guilford Fair in Connecticut. I meant to get a universal thing for this because I know that, you know, traditionally I think they're used by like shipbuilders and wood carvers, like stuff where you need wood. Like, you don't want to just use a screwdriver. You want the, you know, whatever you want to call this, the actuation of like a drill, but you don't want to use the high intensity of a drill. But you don't want to just stand there all day and go like that. So I got this, and I know that they sell, like everyone has one. There's a thing where you can adapt this into a normal 1/4 inch like hex thing, so you can put any kind of bit in here that you want. I need to get that so I can start using that. This is a pair of snap ring pliers. That's for when I was working on the odometer gear, but the snap ring was too big to fit, blah, blah, blah. That's in another video. Here are the other pieces for the snap ring pliers. This is a spare Allen. I think this is 6mm. This actually happened to fit the crank bolt and was the one that I used first because it was just laying around the house. And then I actually dug up my metric Allen set and cracked out the real 6mm one that's, you know, nice and beefy. Is built a little better than this one, but this one definitely backed out the bolt initially. It was getting the job done. I've got a miniature screwdriver set here. I think I'm missing like most of my Phillips, but it's got flathead, star tip, the triangle tip, you know, the other little tricky ones. Here's a magnetic grabber tool. This thing is so handy. I don't know why I waited so long to get one. This is a nail file set, or needle file set rather, which as you can see I haven't used yet. I've got a 3/8 breaker bar. I bought this on a whim because I was out getting a breaker bar and I was like, oh yeah, I'll just grab a 3/8 one too, just in case. It turns out if you need any kind of leverage, this is not any better than using a 3/8 ratchet. I mean, it's maybe marginally better, but if you need real force, you need the 1/2 one. But, you know, I'm just keeping it around. It's nice, you know, if you need to get in kind of a weird place that a wrench wouldn't make sense. Say you need to hold like the back of a bolt or something while you take it off with a ratchet. You could always put another socket on the end of this and hold it. So, you know, it is useful occasionally. Then over here we got all the 1/4" sockets. Here's some bits, and there is a socket back up here which you can attach to that screwdriver, and then you can actually use all the bits. I'm not sure why I took 3 out of 5 of the sets here are missing. So what I have left are the Phillips and the star bits. I don't think they're Torx. They're like some kind of other star. They're like Phillips, but then they have like littler things. Like they're not equal length and width like a Torx. I have a fairly standard set of screwdrivers here. 2 Phillips, 2 different size flatheads, razor blade, or razor rather, with razor blade. Pliers. I know I have that pair of needle nose kicking around the house here somewhere. I'm gonna find them one of these days, and an adjustable wrench. So, but that Stanley toolkit is pretty good. Like I said, if you're starting out, it's got all the basic tools that you'll need, as long as you're not doing anything too crazy. Over here, we got the basics. My gloves and goggles are supposed to be in here, or safety glasses, I should say. They're really more glasses than goggles. But those are out in the Volkswagen because, you know, I've really been working on that every day, and I just leave them out in the back. But here's a spare key to the toolbox. Here's a little Sharpie. I have painter's tape, and then just a smaller roll. I think it might also be the Scotch painter's tape, but you know, it's much thinner, as you can see here. Next, we have electrical tools. So I've got a set of I've got a digital caliper here, which I don't think I've actually used yet. I bought that to, funnily enough, measure the distance on a rotor, and to make sure that my rotors were within spec on the Honda, but I never ended up checking them. So these will get used one day, just they haven't been used yet. There's my OBD2 tool. It's just a generic one, you know, it's not factory level or anything. It was actually relatively cheap, but it's good enough that it reads out the codes and it gives you a description. It's not just the one that shoots out the code. So, you know, it'll give you like the generic description, and you know, you can read basic data on it. So that's good. If you got the check engine light, you'll have some idea of what's going on. This is just a little flashlight. I've got 2 different size fuse pullers here. Then we've got a multimeter over here, which I've been making use of to test the alternator, test batteries, all that good shenanigans. All right, last drawer on the top thing. On the top part of the box, we've got the specialty tools. This is a... What is this? Is this 17/32? Hold on, let me... Sorry if the camera work gets a little crappy here for a second. I just want to see... It is... Oh, excuse me. It's a 7/16. This is a 7/16 fuel pump wrench for when you're working on a Cummins big cam engine. Because apparently the fuel pump bolts are in a... or 2 of them or 1 of them or something. They're in a very weird place, so you need this specific wrench. This was given to me by my cousin, Brian Fairley, and I haven't worked on a Cummins yet, and I doubt that I'll be working on one that big anytime soon, but if I ever need it, I have it right here in my specialty tools. This is a Honda crank pulley tool. I think technically this is a 52 mil hex piece. So there's a 52 mil cutout in the crank pulley. So if you're taking it off without an impact gun, you can actually crack the bolt off with 2 breaker bars. So one breaker bar you attach to this and you jam it in the crank pulley so you can stop it rotating. And then you turn the other way with the other breaker bar and you can crack the crank bolt off. And I want to say crank bolt's 19 mil. So, but it's got a big enough hollowed out piece in the middle here that you can get an impact gun through, or you can get just a socket through. You know, it's plenty big. But I got this because I didn't know if I was going to be able to use an impact to take it off. But I definitely wanted this piece to put the crank bolt back on, because I believe in putting bolts back in with a torque wrench. If they have a torque spec, they're going back in with a torque wrench, and even if they don't, I'm doing them, you know, to tight with a ratchet. I believe in using the impact to take the bolt off, but I am not a fan of using an impact to put bolts back on. I've just seen too many things happen in the family business with mechanics over tightening things with impact guns, because, you know, they're trying to be lightning fast, like woo woo, and, you know, they put it on too tight and there's all kinds of issues. So I'm a firm believer in using ratchets and torque wrenches to put bolts back on. This is a large 1/2 inch extension, which I got when I was working on the Honda to use to get access to the transmission fill plug. This is a terminal cleaner tool. This came with my set of jumper cables, nothing particularly fancy here. If I could pull this off, here we go. You know, you can put this inside the terminal, scrape it off, and then you got the post cleaner right here. Those are my lovely dogs barking in the background. Quiet! Sorry about them. Winston! It's probably a toad or something. They bark at everything. Here's a AutoZone gap gauge, because I got the wrong set of plugs. I was sweet talked into a set of Bosch plugs, because those are the OE recommended plugs on the Volkswagen. And I was like, sure, I wasn't thinking, you know, it's only been 30 years since that car's come out, so maybe spark plugs have changed just a little bit in 30 years. And it turns out that they have, because the terminals on the Bosch plugs were too big for the spark plug pliers, so I had to go back and get the NGK ones, because the NGK plugs, the terminal can screw off and it goes down to a thinner threaded size terminal, and that would fit. So if you have a Mark II Golf that you're fixing up for whatever reason and you're changing the spark plugs, do not buy the Bosch plugs, buy the NGK plugs. Otherwise you will be extremely frustrated. So, but the NGK plugs, I was kind of in a rush. I meant to pick up the ones that were properly gapped already, but I accidentally grabbed the ones that were slightly too big, so, you know, I had to bend dang it, what's that part called? Is that the electrode, the metal arm piece? I had to bend the metal end, and, you know, and then you rub it across the thing here and you check for resistance, and then as soon as it starts resisting, that's, you know, that it's properly gapped. Oh, this video is getting plenty long, isn't it? I hope you're enjoying all this. This is a 5/8 spark plug socket. It's magnetic, so as soon as you put it over the spark plug, you loosen it, you pull it out, and the spark plug stays exactly in the socket, so it won't fall out. You know, it's good. And it's already got a U-joint built in. And this is the 13/16 one, which is the correct size one for the Volkswagen. And this one did not come with a U-joint, unfortunately, which is why I got that 3/8 U-joint, just in case I needed it, but I totally don't, because, you know, it's an inline-4 engine, and it's from 1985, so the spark plugs are, like, right on top. They're super easy to get to. There's no U-joint required for that job. Alrighty. Now we're moving on to the bottom box. Let's start with the big drawer here. This is a torque wrench. This is my good torque wrench, my super fancy one, and, you know, it's Husky, so it's not super fancy, but it's better than the one that I started out with, which is this one that was maybe like 30 bucks, which, hey, I'm not throwing shade on it. It's a great tool. It does work. But when I was putting the Honda crank bolt back on, I believe the torque spec on that is 181 or 182 foot-pounds. And this one doesn't go above 100. So, or maybe it's 120. So, but, you know, so I needed one that goes up to at least, you know, 190 so I could put it back on. This one goes up to 250, I believe. So I bought the torque wrench specifically for that job. I haven't used it since. It's actually, it's got a much nicer mechanism than this one, but this is just the one that I use all the time. So, but that might get used again eventually. You'll notice there's a theme here. I have a lot of specialty tools that were just for that Honda job. I think I I really don't want to say how much I spent because I don't even remember, and if I pulled up the receipts, I probably spent way too much. But all that week, because it took me like a week because I had to wait for the crank bolt or the socket to come in from O'Reilly because I wasn't anticipating that I was actually going to have to pull the crank pulley. So I got set back like, I think it was at least 4 days. It might not have been a week, but you get the gist. The point is that week I spent a lot of money on specialty tools that I wouldn't have usually spent. This tool I did actually get on purpose. This is a serpentine belt tool, which basically it's like having a wrench, but that's like 3 times or 4 times as long. So you get lots of leverage to turn back the idler or tensioner pulley on the thing there. Actually, the reason I was changing the serp belt is because I was changing the idler pulley, because when you turn the AC on, it made a hideous squeak. You could just hear like this awful high-pitched squeak coming from the engine. And, I did some diagnosis, looked on the Honda forums, and son of a gun, it was the idler pulley, which in itself was not an expensive part. Between this and the idler pulley and a new serp belt, I think it was maybe $200 altogether. But then, there was all kinds of incidentals, getting the socket stuck behind the crank pulley and all that extra stuff. But it was supposed to be a fun afternoon job that I was going to be able to get done quickly, and it turned into a 4-day affair. Mostly just the car sitting on jack stands waiting to get worked on. But, I did eventually fix it. But this has got 13, 14, 15, 16, and 18 mil fittings. So, any idler pulley between those sizes, I can, move back or loosen. This is my original breaker bar. I got this on Amazon. I think it was like $10 or whatever. And, it's a breaker bar, so I wasn't super concerned with it. It's literally, for those of you who know who it is, or I suppose I'm going to say this for people who don't know, basically it's a ratchet without the ratchet. So you have the half-inch drive head here, and it does swivel, but it doesn't rotate. It's fixed, so it's for taking off bolts that are on very tightly. It's a fairly simple tool, so I wasn't too concerned about springing a lot of cash for one. And honestly, it's held up fine. I've had it for a year and a half now, and it's done all kinds of jobs, and I've used it as a hammer a couple of times, and it's actually holding up quite well. This little guy I got because I didn't know if I was going to be able to get that, I didn't know if I was going to have an impact to do that, take off that crank pulley. So this was the second breaker bar, with the aforementioned on a crank pulley tool there. This is my original torque wrench. This, like I said, I think was like maybe $25-30. I also got this on Amazon. And this one is also held up really well. The only thing that I don't like about it, I like that it spins. The Husky one, I think it's like a slip ring. Like you pull the ring down and then you have to push it up at the same time. It's kind of awkward. But this one does a much better job of locking. This one, I like that you twist it up, but the locking nut here on the bottom is not very secure. Even if you tighten it on like a lot, it just takes the slightest amount, and this will come loose, and then before you know it, you're tightening something with this, and this is slowly moving up the torque spec in your hand, and you don't even realize it's happening. This wrench was the same thing. It was also for the Honda job, because initially I thought I was going to be able to get this wrench in here. Because for whatever reason, on a frickin' minivan, which you'd think you'd have plenty of room to get tools in, you don't. There's literally, I think the gap between the idler pulley bolt and like just the what do you call that? The wall on the engine bay, whether you want to call it the front wing or whatever. There's literally like this much room. There's just enough room to get the thing in. So I thought, if for whatever reason I couldn't get this tool on, I just got this super long adjustable wrench that I could have used. And I believe this is used for like plumbing. You either use this end, you see it's tapered. Use this like maybe as a, I think, use it like as a plumb weight or whatever. You tie it around and make sure something's perfectly even or whatever where it's mounted, or it's used to punch holes in something. I'm not 100% sure, although I know it's definitely not for automotive. I'm pretty sure I found it in the plumbing section. Over here, we just have this random hammer that was laying around the house. I don't know who bought it. I don't know whose it is. I don't know who used it last. I don't know what it was used for previously, but it ended up in my toolbox. This is a rubber mallet that I bought from the same guy in Connecticut, because I just need a rubber mallet. You know, everyone needs one of those. Then we're going into another drawer here. This is the parts and pieces drawer. Oh, that's really overexposed. Hold on. There we go. That should be better. This is, I got these from the Connecticut guy. This is metric bolts, nuts, and washers. This is standard bolts, nuts, and washers. This is a set of rubber O-rings, and it's literally like every size O-ring that you would ever need, metric and standard. This is the power steering pump belt for a Honda, because on the Odyssey, the power steering system is separate. It's on a separate belt from everything else. So, you know, and you gotta take out a motor mount to actually change the belt. The belt goes right over a motor mount. So you can take the old belt off, you can cut it, you just can't put the new one on without, you know, taking off that mount. So I'm gonna do that one day. It's gonna get a new belt, it's just not anytime soon. These are just 2 license plate screws, because they came in a set of 4 and I only needed the 2 for my for the Volkswagen. This is a set of copper gaskets from when I was changing the fuel filter. This is a repair kit that I picked up because it came with snap rings. That's when I was working on the odometer, but it also comes with R keys, cotter pins, push rings, E-rings, some other fancy things as well. But it's just a basic hardware kit. It was a couple bucks. This is a taillight for an Odyssey. That is a set of whatchamacallits. Come on. This is a terminal set. The universal terminal set. Because the RAV4 had a bad positive terminal, and I had to swap that out. And then this is just random bits. This has just loose bolts, or, you know, any pieces that have fallen off of old parts that I've taken out, or just spare parts that maybe came with a new piece that I ended up not needing. Like, for instance, this, I don't know what you want to call this. It's not really a washer. As you can see, it's quite thick. I'd maybe consider a metal bushing, or bearing, maybe. This was on the new alternator before I swapped the pulleys, because on the new alternator for the Volkswagen, you needed this in between the pulley and the teeth on the alternator. But you don't need it if you have the spacer on the pulley. So that just ended up going in here. This is a bolt from something. This is actually from the instrument cluster on the Volkswagen. I forgot to put it back in. It hasn't affected anything yet, though, so it's staying in here for now. Quiet! Sorry about that, that's the dogs again. Then here we've got the manuals. I've got the Bentley manual, which is supposedly the holy grail on Mark II Volkswagens, Golfs, Jettas, Volkswagen. I said that like that was that's a model. And GTIs as well. It covers all the fuel, all the gas ones, all the diesel ones, the turbo diesel. It even covers all the types of injection, all types of fuel injection that they had on the Mark II platform. This is a Chilton manual for 250. That's a Chilton manual for the for Ford Freestar and Windstar, and also Mercury Monterey, I believe, if that's the correct name for the Mercury minivan. The Honda one is in the Honda, of course. Oh, that drawer has nothing. So we're moving over to the right bank of drawers on the bottom one. This is the kits drawer. Oh, this is supposed to have a tire repair kit in it, but I'm not 100% sure what happened to it. I think I brought it with me today, and I just haven't put it back yet. That's a coolant flushing kit. This belongs with the brake fluid kit, which you'll see in a minute. That's in a different drawer. This is the, I forget what I called this drawer. What is this drawer called? Oh, tapes and ties. Pretty simple. Gorilla tape, electrical tapes, and cable ties. Pretty simple, self-explanatory name. This is supplies. So this is anything that doesn't necessarily fit into the other categories, but or something that you would need. Like that's sandpaper. This drawer is occupied by nothing yet. This is fluids and chemicals. So down here I've got WD-40, engine degreaser, electrical connector cleaner, something. These are all different chemicals. Believe it or not, they're not the same, even though they all have the same cap. That's adhesive remover. And I've got a couple other chemicals that should go in here, but they're out in the Volkswagen because that's where I've been using them the most. And then finally, we have the big drawer at the bottom here, which that's holding the brake flush kit, which this belongs down here with those. These are the spare parts from the shift kit. These are the parts that I didn't install. This is a clutch set for the Volkswagen when I eventually get around to doing the clutch job on it. That's that. As you can see, it comes with all the requisite clutch things. It's, you get the pressure plate, the clutch disc, release bearing, pilot bushing, and an alignment tool, because apparently some clutch kits are sold without an alignment tool, which is crazy to me that you would do that. Especially if you're a shade tree mechanic, if you're not like a dealership mechanic where they give you all the alignment tools, it's like it's crazy that you would just be expected to have one of those lying around. And they vary so much from thing to thing. All right, so that's that. I've got a couple more things along the wall here that don't quite fit in the tool chest. I've got some old oil. That's a box of new chemicals, brake fluid, power steering fluid. Actually, I got to throw the brake fluid out because you're not supposed to let it sit super long, and it's been sitting for like a year. So that's got to go. Some leftover transmission fluid. There's a drain pan. This green bucket I use as a trash can, as you can see. This is my creeper, which was another very lovely Christmas gift. So, you can pull the pin and it flattens down, or you pull the pin and you put it up and it becomes a rolly seat. So that's very nice. And I think that's everything. Oh, there's jack stands and gas cans over there. And then there's also the trolley jack, but that's in the back of my car still from when I had to run out and fix my mom's car because she decided to get a flat 5 miles away from the house. So a couple of the tools I hurriedly packed up, and those are still in the car, but so the trolley jack is one of those things. But that's everything. I suppose that's a toolbox plus a wee bit of the garage for all the things that don't fit in the toolbox. But yeah, that's that. Once again, there's a huge shout out to my mom. She got me this Husky toolbox as a Christmas present. This is like, the greatest thing that I could have ever asked for. I was possibly looking at getting, just a tool chest, just a regular, little square box that holds the tools in it, a normal toolbox. But I was very, very generously surprised with this on Christmas Day. This is more than I could have ever hoped for. This was definitely going to be like a while away in my future purchasing plans. I was really going to focus more on tools first before I got the box, but I'm so glad and appreciative that I have this lovely box to store all my tools in. So thanks for that. I forgot to mention, I'm sure you saw that all the drawers come lined with this anti-slip mat, so you can throw stuff in there. Stuff still slides around, especially with me because I'm pretty aggressive with closing the drawers here. So the wrenches have all slid up. I had them nicely aligned across the bottom here, but just closing this a couple times slides them up. But yeah, I think that's it. Oh, hold on. Not the car keys, but actually on the side here, I have a magnetic tray. Almost, ended the toolbox kit tour without that. And then this is a little tool bag that I got, which is, if I'm just out and about, or if I'm out in the driveway and I know I only need a couple tools, you throw them in here, bring it out. That way you don't have to walk back to the tool cart or just carry them, loose in your hand. But that's everything. Thanks for sticking around, if you actually stuck around to the end of this video, because it's got to be, like 40 minutes now, really long. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode of the golf project. Bye.